So yeah, welcome to the October meeting. Has anyone had a chance to? So I know everyone probably heard of the Windows 10 release. I know there's a few things. I saw a blog post earlier today. There were some enhancements in the ISE. I didn't get a chance to look over it real briefly. Something about the auto debug where you can set some. It's setting the breakpoint. I'm not sure what's setting the breakpoints, but saying the debugging was actually a lot quicker than normal, from what I saw. Besides that, nothing too crazy so far. It ships with PowerShell 5, which people already had access to, so nothing crazy new there. I think the only major thing in the ISE, you get autocomplete for IntelliSense for a DSC, which a lot of people were complaining about when they were typing stuff in the ISE. The other funny thing is, anyone see the Reddit post that came out today about why they named it Windows 10?
I didn't see that. We were talking. We had a whole. We did a whole Windows 10 thing.
Never mind. I'm just gonna skip it all together.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty fascinating.
That's true is another story.
That makes complete sense as to why it's called 10. Because 9 is free.
Well, no, because there was like programming. A lot of Windows programmers in .NET would do a check for Windows 95, 98. They'd shortcut and saying if Windows version equals Windows 9 whatever, it's like, okay, cool, then launch this, otherwise launch in this mode. So they realized so many programmers had this coding in place.
Why would you?
It's easy, it's a shortcut. It saves probably like, you figure...
Do Windows 9 star.
It's a Y2K problem.
Yeah.
Well, and you think people would have fixed that with the...
People don't fix stuff.
Right, just mask it.
Until they have to.
That's why Windows 2008 is like Windows 6.3.
All right, hopefully everyone can see my desktop.
Or 2012 is 6.3.
Guys, bear with me. All right, can everyone see my desktop? Who's online? Yep, awesome, cool. All right, guys, I'm gonna get started.
Matches OS 10.
All right, okay, cool. So basically, I'm going to give a brief presentation on creating custom objects in PowerShell. TJ is going to lead into it with workflows and kind of builds on top of.
No, workflows. We're going to be doing Runspaces.
Runspaces, my mistake. I'm sorry. Yeah, so basically, I'm going to go over creating custom objects in PowerShell. So everyone, as a reminder, I'm pretty sure you've been beaten in your head using PowerShell. That PowerShell returns objects, not text. It's one of the biggest differences between that and other scripting languages. Because of that, each object has properties, methods, and various other things associated with it associated with those objects, and these are referred to as members of the objects. You can use getMember to actually look at this stuff, and we'll give an example of that later. But when people first start in PowerShell, one of the things they, for me, it was kind of hard to grasp at first and get it down was how to create your own custom objects or actually add custom properties to existing objects. So why is this useful? Well, obviously it lets you consolidate different sets of data. For example, if you're trying to do at work, trying to combine information from get AD user and get like mailbox and exchange, sometimes you want to combine that information to like one user report as opposed to separate user reports that get whatever information you can from one or the other. In the example we're going to look at today, we're going to use WMI to look at like 3 separate things on a computer, pretty much the name, RAM, CPU, and OS. You can get these from various classes. So for example, if you want to get the name of the computer and the total physical memory, you use the computer system WMI class. If you want the processor, that's a separate class by itself. And if you want the operating system name, that's an entirely separate WMI Runspace in its own. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to use add member commandlet to actually take one object and actually add more properties, aliases, and methods to it. So we'll go for a quick example. All right, see. Pull that down a bit. So as shown here, basically, as you can see, these are 3 separate objects. We'll run through them real quickly to show you the case. So we'll see that first one, pulling my name and physical memory. Second one, I'm going to pull my processor. And the third one, I'm going to pull the actual caption on the OS, which is Windows Pro 8.1. So basically, one of the ways I'm going to do this is first we're going to save the very first object. Doesn't matter which one it is. I'm just going to show you how to add stuff to an existing object. So I'm going to grab system first, save it into variable. And we can see if we look at the output of that, we can see get member. We can see it already has some stuff in there already. Currently, it's a type of management object. And so far we have only selected down to name and total physical memory. So we have two ways we can actually add members to this. And what we're going to add is we're going to add the processor and the system name. So one way to do it is we can actually pipe it to add member, which we're going to do here first. As you can see, we're going to pipe it to add member. We're going to give it the member type note property. Note property is your standard. It's the pretty much the most basic property you can have. It's a straight string property. You can change it. Really can't do anything with it. Doesn't do any like a method will actually perform something on an object. Properties are strictly just like a text description of the object itself. I'm going to give it a name, processor, and then I'm going to give it a value. Here in the value, I'm actually running basically a command to say, hey, give me the processor, and only pull the name back. So we're going to run that.
The get member dash input object. Normally I would do just $system pipe get member. Is that faster?
So you know what? I had to do the I'd have to take a look at it, but normally if you can get it within, usually you always want to filter left. So if you can get it before you pipe into something, that's usually the fastest. I'm just saying you can do two different ways. You can use the add member allows you to use input object to do it. I never haven't timed the two of them, but feel free to time it in your own free time.
No, I've just never seen get member used like that.
Okay, yeah, it's one of the ways you can use it. I figured I would just show both ways for giggles. So we're going to add that guy real quickly.
What was the question?
Instead of piping our first object, which is system, to add member.
To the get member.
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh, to get member. Oh, same thing. I think it's the same. Oh, it's just I was just doing the full thing. Were you saying get member and just the name?
I normally do $system pipe GM.
Yeah, and you'll see that a lot of times. There's really no difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a slight speed difference between the two because you have to invoke the pipeline. But when you're working at the console, there's really no big difference. So here I'm going to add the operating system as well, caption. Similar situation, instead of piping it, I'm actually calling the object in advance using input object. So, all right, so now we actually look at the object again. We'll see it has all the extra additional properties I piped in there. Originally, system just had name and total physical memory, but now I've added OS and the actual total physical, and the processor as well. And we can see that when we pipe it to format table, all the information's in there. So that's one way. That's pretty much the way you would add stuff to an existing object. One thing. Now, normally, if you add objects that are the same, they'll actually maintain their type. In this case, system management object. But if you start mixing and matching, say if you added like a mailbox information to an AD object, more than likely it'll become a PS custom object because at that point it's no longer either or. It's now a custom object you created from there. But normally if you add stuff from the same type, it'll stay the same object type. I may be wrong with this. I get the proof. It's something I came across today. So I will try it when I come home and correct myself if I'm wrong. So one thing that's cool in, so this is kind of like the whole add member situation is kind of the PS1, PowerShell version 1 way of doing things. In PowerShell version 2 and up, we can actually add things as a hash table. So once again, we'll put system in a variable, and you'll see system is back to just having its two properties. And then we'll build a hash table. So once again, hash tables are key value pairs. So on the left-hand side, we have our key, which is processor, and then on the right-hand side, the value. Same thing with OS. We have the key as OS and the value as what we need to do to get the caption of the OS. So we're going to run that guy. And you'll see if I actually run the hash table itself. You'll see that it pulled the values and everything. So what you can do is you can pipe it to, or same thing as doing input object. Go add member, and then do dash note property members and just pass the hash table. That'll pass everything you have included in the hash table into that object. So we'll show you right there. And now we can see, once again, system has all that information. So using the hash table method is actually really good when it comes to if you have a ton of stuff you're trying to add in one big swoop. Like say you're trying to add like 10 or 20 items. A hash table is a good way to kind of toss it in there and then just add it in one add member statement, as opposed to doing 20 different add member statements per individual like piece of information you're trying to add.
Can you do a get type on system?
Sure. Get type data?
No, it's a dot source.
Oh, sorry.
Dot get type.
So yeah, PS custom object. Never mind. Yeah. So base type was system object. I wonder if that changes how it is. Interesting. All right. So one of the cool things you do with add member as well is you can add an alias. So you might ask, why would I need to add an alias to something? I know, for example, working in Exchange a lot, that Exchange accepts a certain type of name when it comes from passing an object. I'm trying to think of a good example. Sometimes it wants name. So you'll run in some cases where, depending with third-party modules, and I'll give an example on a theoretical example that I can't think of right off the top of my head, but say you do get 80 computer and you're going to a third-party module that's looking for server as the name instead of computer. A lot of times what you do for an object, if you try to pipe that across, it's going to see computer come across, try to match it up with server, and not be able to kind of pipe that stuff through. So what you can do is you can set an alias so that in those situations where you need that, you can actually have that stuff match up. So here I'm going to add a alias property for name. Currently, as we saw earlier, the name, where'd you go? Name of my computer is Xer Surface. But say for some reason I'm working with a commandlet that needs to have computer name as its alias. So what I'll do is add member type alias property, give it computer name, and tell what the existing value it needs to match up on. And when you see here, you'll see now I have, if I show all the values, I have a computer name and name that match each other. Cool part is if you change name, obviously it'll change over for the alias as well.
You do a GM on it. Say alias.
Yes, actually, hold on here. Yeah, so you see alias property. And basically definitions called out right here. Computer name will always equal name. So cool part is you can also create methods even for these objects. So basically here I'll create a method called average item size. Well, actually, that should be total physical size. Originally this was done with what's it called? Active Directory and Exchange commandlets internally in my office. And obviously that stuff doesn't work when I'm outside the office. So basically I'm going to create a method called total physical memory size in GB. That's gigabytes. Previously you see it's in kilobytes, or is that actually straight bytes? That's actually straight bytes. So yeah, I can see I still have mailbox here, so we'll just get rid of that later. So you notice what things here. Basically I'm going to add member type script method. I'm going to give it a name, and then I'm going to give it a value. Now note that when you give it the value, it has to be in like a script block. So basically I'm just using the math .NET type, which lets me get the round operator, or I guess the round method. And basically I'm just saying this. So whenever you call this, that means this object. So whenever you're doing any sort of like method or script method or any sort of like method for your object, you always use this to reference one of its submembers. Because obviously you may change the name of the object, some of those lines are called something else, so this helps you actually reference it the exact same all the time. So basically I'm saying this object, which is system, take the total physical memory and divide it by 1 gigabyte. So we'll run that, we'll add that guy.
So this is a version 3 thing?
No, this is version 2. It's version 2 above. It's pretty much just saying if you're going to use a script method, if you do anything, so if you're going to add an object that's anything besides a straight property that just has no mechanics behind it, no scripting behind it, no anything else behind it, you can give it whatever. But if you're going to use something where it has to perform an action on one of the properties, you always reference that object by using $this.
Yeah, you can use $underscore.
You know, I didn't try that. I did in the documentation for this. It recommends using this.
This is easy.
It makes
a little more obvious.
Yeah.
I've never heard of
Well,
it.
I think $sign underscore is a very task to the object.
I thought it was the object and then you can get the components of it from it.
Yeah, it is. That's how you refer to something that's piped. I'm not like, have you used it this way before for creating script methods? Okay, well that's probably, yeah. So $sign underscore always means something that was piped through. We're not piping anything here. So that's why we're using
He wants to do it on this property type, which is a script method of the object.
Yeah. Like normally, like in a for loop, things like that.
Right. It's almost as if this object isn't defined. So
Yeah, because I
know
think,
where am I getting when I'm going to this action?
because I'm not mistaken, actually that is, I forget what the $sign underscore is short for, but it's short for something else. I'd have to look it up because I remember I had it
You
here.
had it in there for a for loop and stuff.
Yeah, but also it's actually short for PS item. So
Yes, that's what yes.
so yeah, it wouldn't work with that. It wouldn't work in place of this because that's for it's a total different alias for something else.
This references itself.
Yeah, well, underscore references PS item. So you can swap either a $underbar or PS item in your script. They both mean the same thing. Get back to my. So we added that guy. So now we can actually run that method. And you see if it actually rounds up to 4. And if we do system by itself, you can see it still has there. So that's our new method. That's our method we actually added to it. Sorry, not method. That is a script method. Now, technically, this should be a script property, since the member isn't doing anything to the object, but generating a new property on the fly. Usually, you use a method to actually change the object itself, as opposed to generating something from the object. It's a kind of weird nomenclature. So the biggest example I can show you is that, so for example, if I, script there. So let's take a look at get process. This makes it like a little bit easier to illustrate. So I'm going to pipe get process select member and show only the scripts and methods. Oops, excuse me. All right, so you show that usually the script properties are something that do perform an action on, like they basically just change a small portion of an existing property. So basically they're just taking, for example, for the CPU, it's taking the total processor time in seconds, but an actual method is something that does something to the object. For example, kills it, refresh it, starts it, something along those lines. So that's just one thing you just would keep in mind, the difference between the two. You can
you not modify the object with?
You know what, you probably could. I don't think it's kind of frowned upon. It's a good question.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could have your custom object could have a property, and you know, methods typically set. You know, one of the things they do is they set the value of properties, and so you could have a. Yeah. Well, you actually speaking real words here. I didn't make it up. So I just wonder if we, you know, I mean, could you not these methods, you know, act on kind of outside the system, outside the object to do something to the system? Could you not do the same thing here? It's an interesting experiment.
Yeah, that would be. I don't think I've actually been able to I don't think I've actually been able to make actual methods. I think and we'll show it a little bit later. I think we can only make script methods and script properties when it comes to this. We'll review that in a second. Oh, right here actually. So basically, we can go over the exact type of types you can actually add to an object by just piping it. Well, pulling get member. Oh, sorry, get help on add member, and look at the member types. So you see here we have a note property, alias property, script property. Okay, so when you're creating custom objects, you don't get a straight method. I'm assuming it's because you're making the object itself can't interact outside the system like you mentioned earlier. But to kind of follow the nomenclature, a script property is something that's going to just not change any of the values of an object. It's just going to give you a new, basically a modified value of something that's already there or a different display of it, while method's actually going to do something to the object. There's also a pretty good article on right here that has a good breakdown of what they actually do and like kind of a little better description. It's a little codey is like they use it, I guess. It's very Devi speak, but it's a good starting point. So they give you a breakdown of exactly like methods, method underlying objects, no properties, values outside of script, the method whose value is the output of a script. It's better terminology than I'm using. But for more accurate stuff, you want to review that just by using to get help. And one thing, just always remember, update your help. Because I remember when I first ran this, I was like, where's my help? Because I again recently installed the PowerShell version 5 preview. So always keep your help updated. So that's basically how to add members to an existing object. But there's going to be some cases when you want to actually create your own objects. So a lot of cases you're going to actually, when you're working on something, you're going to create a new object. There's not always going to be a point where you're going to start from an existing object. And depending on what version of PowerShell you're using, you're going to have different methods to support which ways to create custom objects. And we'll go through 2 examples of those. So the PowerShell v1 way. Basically, PowerShell v1 way is what we went over a little bit earlier, but basically you'd have to use new object, PS object. So we're going to create a new object called food. And we'll see here that food is a PS custom object right now. Currently has next to nothing besides a few methods. So we're going to add a bunch of members to it. So in PowerShell v1, what we did earlier, same thing we did earlier, add extra values to an existing object. We're going to just use add member. So I'm going to add a bunch of note properties. I'm in a note property called name. It's called broccoli. A note property called taste, which is yucky. Note property amount in grams. I'm going to, with a value of 250 and calories per gram, which is 0.34. That'll give us some stuff to play with a little bit later. So those guys are added, and we can see real quickly. Oh, where'd you go? Yeah, that's right. So we got some stuff there. So here's our static properties, or from there. So actually, what we're going to do is we're going to add a script method that basically gives us the total calories from the amount in grams. So basically, it's just script property, name total calories, and once again, it's this dot amount in grams times this calories per gram. Once again, this is used to show that you're working on that particular object. And then for our European friends, I'm going to add an alias called energy in grams. So you'll see we have all this fun stuff in here. You can see the script property itself showing you exactly what it's actually running. So if we go to food total calories, you'll see how that works. See total calories 85, because total calories is this amount in grams times calories per gram. So if we change that, you'll notice we run it again, the script property will kick in and give us a new calories per gram. So that's one way to create a custom object. A quick and dirty way that works in all versions of PowerShell.
Before we go back to that, so you have just one item in that object now, right? So now if I want to add another record, if you will, to the object itself, I don't have to specify the total calories column, right? That will automatically calculate whenever I add a second food item to that food item.
No, because if What do you mean when you mean add a second item to that? What do you
So
mean?
say I want to say I want to add pizza.
Okay.
So I'll have broccoli and pizza, right? I have to define name, taste, amount in grams, and calories per gram.
Mm-hmm.
Will total calories calculate automatically on that next item, or do I have to specify?
He wants an array of hashes.
Well, yeah, you'd have to make the default object type and say new one of food. Here we're just defining a single object. I mean, Greg, you could say, we could just say, better food equals food, and then just work off better food and have that change that one, and then we would inherit all that script stuff.
You could do food, square bracket, so then you get to make it an array. Right? Maybe it's food 1, food 2.
I still don't think it would make it an array though. Give a quick round. So you're saying do food square bracket?
Square bracket 1, you already have 0, right? And then you can define, is your input object, you can say food square.
I've got the thing is, you didn't define food as an array first, so I don't know if that'll.
It's already a PS custom.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have that's something we have to work on in advance. We have to create an object first, like a blank object, then kind of make an array of them from there.
Well, I think you just do food with open and closed square brackets,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you do the input object, you would say input object food sub 1 or whatever, or 0, and you can add new ones on top.
So you're saying food.
Food open bracket.
But you need PS something.
Give it something other than food, because you already have that defined. Like food A or something.
It's one object. And what do you want me to do?
And then space equals new object, PS object.
Alright. Nope, two objects. So let's take this keyboard. I'm just gonna copy because it's hard to type on my Surface keyboard, which on a inclined podium.
Who's having the problem with the...
Yeah, I think you'd have to actually create an array first and then add the objects individually.
So if you put new object, PS object array,
Oh yeah, hold on.
How I do a lot of searching like that, I'll just create like a result list array.
Yeah, I usually just make
Find
the.
new objects and then plus equal.
Yeah, that's how I normally do it. Yeah, I'm not sure you can, because usually an array kind of.
Once it's what it is, unless it actually has a method to be able to convert it to an array, you need to assign it to that.
Yeah, so you guys played that at home. So a quick and dirty way to actually get an object together that just has properties, like no properties, is you can actually pipe a blank string to select object. So for example, we'll do good food, and we'll just pipe, quote, like open quote, end quote. I keep getting hit F8. And you'll see that we actually have an object because of that. And then we can actually just start working on all the different things. So we'll give it the name hamburger, taste delicious, amount of grams 250, and calories per gram 4.5. And you'll see that we have it there as well. So that's like a really quick and dirty way to get an object together. Obviously, you still need to use the add member if you want to add script property or alias property. So obviously in PowerShell 2, we saw a little bit earlier, you can actually use a hash table. So once again, we'll create a hash table called properties, and we'll put all the note properties we want to make ahead of time. Name equals broccoli, taste equals yucky, amount in grams equals 250, and calories per gram 0.34. Excuse me. As you can see, that's our hash table. And we can just say food equals new object, PS object dash property, and just pass that hash table to it. And we can see that it made the object. Now, we could have done that in like one actual swoop and just included the hash table directly in properties as we do here. So it's the same exact thing, except instead of defining properties ahead of time, we're defining it in line. A little bit easier to read the other way, but just want to know you can do it there as well too. And you'll see that works as well. So like I said earlier, note for anything that isn't a note property, you're still going to have to use add member. So to get all our other stuff we had before, we'll have to use add member to gain back all our fun little properties. So coming back to hash table, as you guys have noticed before, hash tables are always out of order. Like the order you define a hash table is always going to be random if you use a straight hash table. So usually just keep that in mind that it's never going to be in the actual way you do it unless you use an ordered hash table. I'm not sure if I go over that later or not. Yes, I do. So that's one of the things you want to keep in mind. So in PowerShell 3.0, it's actually got a lot easier. We can just use PS custom object. So once again, we'll use a hash table to get this together. And as I'm showing you here, so currently we made that hash table as props. We define name first, but if you look, originally we defined name, taste, and amount in grams. It came out amount in grams, name, taste, and calories. So that's just showing you that hash tables always come out random unless you make it an ordered hash table. So an ordered hash table will force it to actually take on exactly how you're entering it. So I'll run that again as an ordered. And you'll see that it actually went in the exact space same way I did it. I think there's a very, very small speed difference of milliseconds between the two, but for especially long hash tables, kind of helps you keep your sanity. So the cool part is, in PowerShell 3.0, we can use this .NET accelerator, PS custom object, and it's stupid simple. It says food equals accelerator and the hash table, and we have our object, which is awesome because it's a lot less stuff to type. And as in the previous example, we could have just specified the hash table at runtime of, well, during it instead of doing it beforehand. And it'll give us the exact same thing. So similar situation, we'll still need to add any script properties or alias properties after the fact. And we'll do that again, so you can see they're there. And you'll see now they're actually there again. So we got the energy in grams as our alias and total calories. So one way I saw in researching this, which was really weird, and it was more of a fascination to me, besides being something practical, is that you can define an object as a module and then import that module. It's a little weird. So starting with PowerShell version 2.0, you can actually define it as new module. So here I'm going food, new module as custom object, and I'm passing an entire script block where I'm almost like I'm defining parameters for the module in a sense, and those parameters are going to become the properties of the object. So here I have name, taste, I have amount in grams, and here I can actually pass almost like script portions. I can pass a function called total calories, and that'll actually come up as a script property. So the one trade-off with this method is pretty cool is you can actually, in one like swoop, you can actually define all your actual like script properties or script methods when defining it. So here I'll do this. Wait, food script block. Where did I go here? Yeah. And then once you're done doing, you get export module. Like I said, it's really weird, and you want to export like all the variables and functions. But just to show you it works. Where'd you go, F8? So once again, it made it. Now the weird part is I couldn't figure out how to get aliases in there. I looked all over the place, like trying to research this method. I just couldn't figure out how to get aliases. So using this method, you have to add aliases by themselves. It's a little clunky. It's a little weird. Like I said, I'm not quite sure how useful it is, besides being able to get the script methods in there in advanced. And just make sure it's actually see. Weird. Anyway, so one other thing I want to give tip-wise is that once an object is custom object is created, you can actually change the type name. So sometimes people ask, like, why would you want to change the type name? Well, one of the reasons why is that sometimes, depending on the type it is, it gets different formatting rules applied to it. Everything when originally piped out to the screen, like for example, like get process has a formatting file associated with it that always shows, I think, name, working set, something else, even though it has a bazillion other properties. So by forcing a type on your custom object, you can force it into a certain formatting file. You're probably not going to do this that often. So for example, our good food, let's see if it's actually still here. Good food is here. So currently good food is of the type selected system string. I'm going to change it to a custom.food object. So if I pipe that guy in again, you'll see it's now of a type custom.food object. And if I created a custom formatting for food objects to only show the taste and the name, if I just did good food, like $ good food, as opposed to getting everything, I would just get like what was defined actually in my formatting file. And I'm not going to go over how to make formatting files. You can research that on your own. And I think this is the way I've been doing when I create multiple objects and add them to an array. So I'll just go over the way I do it. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. You guys can enlighten me on. So one thing I see a lot in people who start playing around with custom objects is that when they're actually looping through something to create multiple custom objects, they kind of make the mistake of defining the object, creating the new object first, and then trying to reiterate on that one and actually add it to a loop, and they wind up with duplicate objects. So for example, I'm going to make an array of strings called favorite foods. I'm going to create an empty array called food table. I'm going to create my hash table for the properties of food. And basically I'm going to say current food equals the prop. So in this example, I'm going to create an empty object outside of my loop. So you'll see current food is, place you up there. So you see current food is currently a empty object, and I'm going to pretty much loop through my favorite foods list and hopefully create 3 separate items with random time I ate it, random amount in grams, and add it to a food table. So we'll go through there, but as you see, because I created the object outside of the loop, it's all going to be the same thing over and over again. Because basically all I did was I never saved, because I was referencing the same object each time, it was working on the same, it basically saved the last object multiple times. So what you want to do is actually in your loop, so we'll do this again. You actually want to create it within your loop, because that creates a new instance as opposed to referencing the same instance over and over again. So once again, difference basically here is we created the object, creating the object in the loop. Previously we created it outside of the loop. So here we're creating a new instance within the loop. And you'll see if we go to food table, you'll see now that I have the individual objects in there. So like I said, it's mostly a mistake that a lot of people make when they first start playing around with custom objects. Like I said, if someone has like a better way of doing arrays of custom objects, you let me know. So obviously there's a lot of different ways to do it. Basically the way you want to do it is whatever works best for you and your company. If you're unfortunately like my company, still stuck on PowerShell v2, you're going to stick with kind of the new object hash table method. If you use version 3 and above, you're going to want to go with the accelerator method because that is the easiest and keystroke wise. Also, there is a speed difference between the different methods. If you're only creating a few objects with a few properties and speed's not an issue, stick whatever's easy for you. But if you're going for scale, note there's a huge difference between them. So BoProx actually did 2 series of articles on this, and actually used his script to test this in my environment to show the speed difference between them. So definitely check out his blog post. I'll link to it later today. It's actually, we'll look at it real quickly here. That's how quick this comes up. So he did an actually awesome series of articles, basically just going over and wrote a cool script showing the difference between them. And that's what I co-opted today for this. So biggest thing, add member is the slowest and scales the worst when it comes to working with objects. The rest are much, much faster. So new module, surprisingly, relatively quick. The select object and new object PS object methods are about 30 to 40% faster than new module. And PS custom object is the fastest. For ultimate speed, you can use C# and actually get really down and dirty. I tried figuring out how to do it. I couldn't. So good luck with that. So, was that?
Right in assembly.
Yeah, of course. I'm not sure if you can actually pass that in PowerShell though, but we'll see. I think C# is the lowest it can possibly get in PowerShell, if I'm not mistaken. So using BoProx's script, basically it creates a custom object X amount of times with X amount of properties. So the script basically goes through creating 1,000 objects with 5, 10, 25, 50, and 100 properties respectively. And basically you can see here is when you use, where are we at here? When you use add member with 1,000 objects with 1,000 properties, it takes 14 seconds as opposed to everything else, which is 1 second or slower or lower. The PS custom object only takes 0.4 seconds. And to kind of illustrate this, you can see how bad add member scales as opposed to all the other methods. And if you break those in, so even in a small cycle, if you're only creating like a small amount of custom objects, even though the add member is like 0.4 seconds, everything else is 0.05 or lower. So it does have a huge difference in speed-wise as speed's concerned with your scripts. And just blowing out the other methods, you can see they're kind of pretty much bumped up all together. Like I said, new module is the slowest up here. Everything else is almost relatively close. You can see it's weird, there's a slight difference between PS custom object ordered and unordered. I mean, they're almost the same. It almost seems like there's some weird calculation thing going on there that makes one faster than the other during different times. So that's it for my custom object presentation. Anybody have any questions? All right, cool. I'm going to hand it over to TJ.
Are you recording?
I am recording. And hopefully, double. Sorry, Jeff. Jeff, sorry for that. So basically, Jeff, basically, if you can still hear me, I'll type it out. So the double is just, I'm just casting that variable as a type of double. If I'm not mistaken, double is a real number. So if you cast it to int, so for example, if I did int, my numbers have to be whole, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or -1, 6, so on and so forth. Double gives you numbers like 45.90, -0.003. It's just a programming, it's like a construct of what it is, just like bracket string is a series of text. And like bracket array is an array object. Hope that answers your question. Sorry I didn't get to you earlier because I was really on one laptop here, so I couldn't see everything.
All right, so thank you very much, John. Custom objects are great, and you will use them very much in all of your scripting. So learn them, use them. They are your best friend. However, when you start getting into wanting to do, I guess, more involved scripts that would probably reach across multiple systems, the tendency is as you do more and more things against those systems, you want to start improving its speed, making it faster, finding ways of making it more efficient and everything. There's a nice little thing called Runspaces. Runspaces is actually a .NET functionality. that lives in the, actually you'll kind of pull it up here. Just open it really fast. It actually lives in the namespace, the PowerShell namespace of System.Management Automation Runspaces. And the definition is kind of funny. A runspace, or a pool of runspaces, is the operating environment where the command pipeline of the PowerShell object is invoked. And I'll show you all these pieces. There's actually multiple pieces that go into running a runspace. I've used this. Funny thing is, I've used this just to do ping across 1,500 servers. Because what happens when 5 of those servers don't respond back right away? You have to wait 5 seconds for each one of those. And it takes forever just to run a simple ping across 1,500 boxes. We, every 2 years at work, run a power down. So we shut down all of our infrastructure within our building. It's close to about 4,000 machines, if I remember correctly what I counted. 1,500 of those were Windows. I don't care about the Linux side because that's a whole other team. So we had to find ways for the guys that were doing all of this to know, 1, if it was shut down, and 2, to shut them down. So we'd run the ping, make sure everything came back like we were expecting it, and then there was another one using Runspaces as well that shut them all down. And thankfully, because you can't really test that script on production, we only had about 100 servers that didn't respond to the shutdown command. So it was a big win for us because they've had major problems with this in the past. So there's a bunch of pieces to doing Runspaces. And I was just going to walk through all of this because otherwise putting it in PowerPoint is just pointless. So you can look at the MSDN article or documentation on the System.Management.Runspaces, which is really where all of the Runspace pools, Runspaces, Runspace factories, which is the cast here that we have, that you need to be able to run Runspaces. First, in here I have our parameters so that I can just run this script as I need to. Save this to nice little application. Oh, lovely temp. And I'll show it to you really fast here. You'll see temp, right? I know. There's what do I call this thing? Wonderful. If I pass it, I'm just going to give it some computer names. I have key count 5. This isn't going to mean anything right now. So for whatever reason, it's very, very slow. But basically, that's all we're returning. It's just saying how long it slept and return back, the machine name and the sleep time that it slept. However, when we get a list of 15, so that we don't. So I have 15 in there. If I go run this with our computer names, maybe not. That not go. Oh, what did I miss? What did I miss? I missed something there. Oh, that's right. Little turtle bracelets. Little screens. Don't love them. There we go. It just worked. I know it works. Now, yes. Now we'll see. It's sleep, so it's going to take a little bit. But you can start seeing that unfortunately it's doing it kind of more, but now we did the first three. And the thing will come back and go, that's just do not come back in order. So you kind of see randomly how but they came back in chunks, right? So as the slower ones came back. So the way that this works is the queue count I gave is here. I can set this up to whatever number I wanted to, which is why I made it a parameter. Which is what I did with my ping script. I had 300 queues, 300 run spaces that I could run this against, which would rifle through them pretty quick. So you can imagine how quickly my ping ran for all the successful ones. You know, I was only waiting on the ones that failed. So really to run ping against 1,500 hosts with 300 queues took 5 seconds, right? Because you're still at the limit.
That's why 300 can hurt.
Yes, right. So this number is important too because there's a point where you actually don't get any performance increase. You actually get a performance decrease as you up that number. So that's a number you can actually play with and figure out, use your measure object and measure commands to see how long it takes for your run spaces, let's say pools, to run. So first we define our run space pool with that queue count using the run space factory. We then open it, and then the region here is where I define. And we can kind of see this is what I used in production. There's nothing special here, so I can show you my script block. And that script block is exactly what it is. And when you use script block in other situations, it's a PowerShell script. Exactly, so you can give it parameters, do what you need to in there. Creating objects, you can even see here I use the add member to make my objects. Well, in my environment, I do because I don't have V3 everywhere. I have V2. So John and I work at the same spot. Unfortunately, we are only on V2. So that the production level script. And for our purposes, here's our script here. I accept a computer name in, and I am hashing it, right? I'm still doing the hash table new object right then and there. I get the seconds, the sleep seconds I sleep, and I random number, and then I return that result. So. Yeah, it is very interesting when you find that. So then my next section here is I take all my computers I'm going to run this against. And because that's the variable I'm passing down to my script block, I've got to build what's going to be run within each run space. So I build all the run spaces that need to be built. And you can see here I'm doing a lot of add script. So here's the script block that we defined earlier. So that's why we defined it where we did, because I can't set it up here unless it's defined already. And then I add my computer argument. So that's how I'm passing down like a parameter. If you were to run the script dash computer name, right, you're just going to do the add argument. And I'm calling it as, lo and behold, the PowerShell. I then give it the runspace pool to run these wonderful PowerShell objects. And then the collection is what I'm going to get back as it runs. So it's going to set it all up into here and how I expect that all to come back. And then the while loop of while there is a runspace collection for each runspace in my collection to array. I'll give you a disclaimer. I'm not 100% familiar with all the inner workings of all this, so I know that it works. One, but two, I don't understand everything. I'm not a .NET developer. I'm an IT admin who understands a little bit of some of this stuff. So I didn't have hours upon hours to dive into why they had defined it to array. Other than that, you're looping through it, and you need that object, and you need to loop through each one of those run spaces within the pool. And then it's checking here if the run space finishes. And if the run space finishes, it ends that run space, because then the whole run space pool handles submitting the next thing. So it kind of does it all for you. You don't have to go and say, oh, run this thing for me again. It will do it automatically. Once one has been disposed, once it's been closed, it will initiate the next one. So it handles that queue. Yes?
So when you do it to an array that worked, or it skipped it? Because I think what happens is when you do a for each, you can't change the contents of the thing that you're doing the for each. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want to do in your thing in order to find out when it's done. So that we often, I write programs, and we often have to do that. You have to make another list, basically, and then run through the one list and remove from the other list to keep the for each from, it'll actually fail with an error at runtime. So you can't remove things from the list that you're doing for each.
Okay. So that's probably why, because these are, well, they are defined within PowerShell. They are somewhat, you're really leveraging .NET here, and not, you're leveraging .NET. So we dispose of each one of those run spaces once it's finished. We actually get back, we make sure we collect everything. Then we remove that run space, which closes it. And it runs through all that, and then I just dump out my run space to the screen.
And maybe because they're adding an array, you can give the array for the object, putting it in, you telling it what it is.
Yeah, because these are all methods, like we learned earlier. These are all methods on the run space, on this run space object here.
So as you put it up the collection of labels, goes out putting this in and typing what you're putting in next to array. So then you have to then tell it what's coming out is an array. So you can force it to type.
Yeah, it's very, this is the one section that I'm least familiar with in this whole thing. I do know that you've got to end it and dispose of it and then remove it. You got to remove it from the collection. You've got to dispose of the run space, and you got to remove it from the collection so it knows to submit another one. This was super handy. Now, the nice thing about it, right, is this is a really simple and somewhat trivial kind of example, because all we're doing is just taking computer names, sleeping for a certain amount of time. But maybe we can show it this way. Nice thing about it is it's not, when you run PowerShell normally, it's one PowerShell instance. Right? So if you're going to invoke a command against, say, 100 systems, you're only running in that one PowerShell instance. Right? So if you're expecting to get back a lot of information, you do a lot of processing, so on and so forth, you're using up memory in that thread here. Whereas in Runspaces, this is actually allowing you to branch out across other CPUs and other threads. So it actually helps you be more efficient across your own machine and allowing you, which is why you have to be careful how many queues you open up. because you open up too many queues, and you're basically pegging your system, and the performance then now it's got to swap a lot of stuff in and out, and scheduling the CPU to do all this processing. You're now hitting that threshold, right? So keep that in mind as you if you decide to use Runspaces. I love Runspaces to do this because at work we're touching 1,500 servers, 2,000 boxes every night with our profiling, collecting a bunch of information and bringing it all back. Now we remotely go out and do that, and we do the processing on those boxes. But to get all of that and then to send it all, it's a lot faster to do this, and we'll see this. I have my curly braces here. We'll do 100 because it will take a little bit. I'll do a queue count of 10. I think. Let's see. Should be more than one PowerShell instance. I think exactly. It might not show it here. I don't know. Yeah. But you can see here too that not everything came back in the same order that you submitted it, right? Like 100 here came back a lot sooner than it came back with these other ones. The other thing that Runspaces allows you is you can actually define Runspaces. Runspaces is a lot less overhead than regular PowerShell window. So you say, oh, I'm going to invoke this against, well, let's just run this against 100 other machines. I'm going to do it with my machine. I'm just going to call PowerShell. Well, that's going to start up a whole instance of PowerShell, which is actually very heavy. Whereas in Runspaces, I can actually define what's available to me, and it's a very lightweight instance of PowerShell. I have what I need, but it's a very lightweight instance of PowerShell. So therefore, you're not doing all this heavy lifting with just opening PowerShell every time you run. A lot of those things are there on the MSDN site as well. BoeProx has done a lot of this. Tomei, who lives just up in New York, does a lot with Runspaces. He's more of a developer type. He's used PowerShell a lot of times, which I saw in the PowerShell Summit, which kind of gave me the idea. Ooh, we could use this, and I think I grabbed some of his code and doing some of his stuff too. So this is not necessarily original. I'll credit it as well. Runspaces has a little bit of a caveat. You have to be careful with variables. As things are torn down, not everything is really. Sometimes things aren't always completely removed. So within your Runspaces, your pools and the queues that have some things are left over. So you have to be very careful. If you get some really weird results, it's probably because something was defined and you're reusing it without defining it beforehand. So you've got to be really careful when using Runspaces with regards to some of those things. So we like to define a lot of our variables, basically what needs to go in them, without saying, make sure we know what's going to go in them, because it doesn't really dispose of them as what we would expect disposed to really dispose the Runspace. So keep that little caveat in mind. And I think that's really all I got. It's not. super in depth on it, but it's a nice little way of actually speeding up things, especially for those of us who have to go across a lot of different hosts, or need to reach out and touch a lot of different hosts to collect a lot of information. This is a great way of being able to do that. Or even, I gotta touch this file server. This file server can handle thousands of connections at the same time, right? And I need to collect a bunch of files, munge all this data, and then dump this stuff back out. And you can do that with this and spinning up all of those instances. Sky is kind of the limit. Runspaces is a more advanced kind of feature functionality, but we just started using it within our organization, and it has it's helped significantly. Some people actually are a little more gung-ho about it, because now they're looking for, how can we get something that used to take 2 hours now takes 2 minutes by using Runspaces, which is really great. And now they're looking, we can get it to 50 seconds. I'm just like, move on. 2 minutes is awesome. Move on. You don't need to gain that extra 70 seconds. It's not worth it at this point. Right, diminishing returns. So you can get a really quick win by using Runspaces and save a lot of time by doing it. So. Well, there's always, like, that's too where, how many queues can you run at the same time, right? When we talk about our queue count here, it's all inclusive, right? It's not just how many queues can run at the same time, it's how your system handles, using Runspaces to do the work you need to do.
Perfect install. Rather than installing something that flexes that get faster than you use too fast. Take some stuff at one time.
So let's share this code?
Yes.
I'll share it so that we can run the code.
A little bit for free here. I don't know when you guys define parameters. I've started doing this as well, especially around computer name. Don't forget you have value from pipeline and what's the other one? Forget it right off the top of my head. There's two things that you can receive from pipeline, right? Property. I think it's property from pipeline. Where if you pipe in, like say an 80 object, array of an 80 object, and it has computer name, it will match up automatically within your script. So it's a nice and easy way of kind of, when you do pipelining yourself, of being able to kind of make it work like PowerShell works with its own commands. So I know, because John kind of alluded to it earlier, and sometimes why that works and why that doesn't work in your scripts. If you don't have that, it won't match up. So, because it doesn't know what to match up where. But this is how you can define how you match those things up.
Explaining, oh, well, the value map,
So, trying to probably build a presentation on basically parameters. There's some really cool things you can do within defining parameters. As you get into more complicated scripts, which is what we're doing, and I have to fight against my organization because they want to put a lot of stuff up here that there's easier ways to do it. They do put a lot of extra stuff in their script, right? Where there's it's getting late, so I'm losing my mind. But let's call it naming your parameter sets. It's parameter sets. It's what you can name your parameter sets, so that way if I say I'm going to give a computer name, but I also could accept computer names from the URI. The URI parameter will not be an option when you try to tag, like you hit dash URI won't be available because the way I have parameter sets set up. So that way you can kind of control, that's the biggest problem, right, when you write big scripts that accept a lot of different kinds of things in. Well, if he gives me the computer name, I don't need, the path to where he has his, this file of computer names, right? And I don't want them to accidentally give me one and then I got to handle all of this. It's really easy when you do parameter sets to do that. So one of my problems that I'm running into at work right now is guys like to do a lot of that checking inside the script. Make your script a little more easier, user friendly by using parameter sets and better names, but fewer parameters. We'll go there. Yeah. Well, be consistent with PowerShell, unless it's just they want to go. They want computer path or computer name path, and I'm like, just accept computer name. You don't need to get all these other sources. Have some filter to the left, right? My script shouldn't have to go and get all your computer names. You should have them defined before you run. Right. Condense your stuff down into little functions as much as possible, right? Don't make your script and then run a control script that handles all this. So write reusable code. There's so many times that we have duplicated efforts because, and a lot of times it's because we just want to get stuff done.
Well, it's, part of it's, I think, converting from top-down programming to something else. So I still bring in a scripting time. Catch myself ruining it.
Yeah.
Again, it does, to your point, get the job done.
And that's why objects are so important, right? Because if you know that you only have to return one object, it helps you keep things simple, right? And even in your script, if you write functions to do certain things, then what you can do with those functions is you can build your module. It's very simple at that point. Name your functions normal PowerShell names, like get, dash, in my case, SID computer name, right? Always preface with your a 3-letter or whatever acronym before, so that you don't confuse with Microsoft stuff. But we'll build our functions, and then it's very easy to convert those into a module later on. And then all you have to do is put it in your module directory and let it automatically input. That's all you do. That was free. Not that this isn't free, but
It was extra.
yeah. Any other questions, comments? Tomatoes? Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Anybody have any feedback?
Well, let's probably check that. I see something. Probably gonna say, you guys are all wrong. Oh yeah, that's true. They can hear me. I'm so not used to this. You can hear me. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. If you have another question, go ahead. Let's see what this says. Pivot tables. Oh no.
They're very easy. I use them all the time.
Let's see here. Okay, so let's go back over here.
I can show you an easy way of understanding it.
I doubt it. Taking 10 steps out.
It's wonderful you call out Doug. I love calling out Doug.
And do a search for Mr. Excel. I'm serious. I saw that one time.
So one comment is do a search for call out, what is it, Mr. Excel pivot table? What do you say?
Mr. Excel pivot table is like screensavers.
Screensavers.
Screensavers to do that.
Oh, yeah.
They had a video which explained it. I'm like, oh, why have I been able to play the pivot tables all this time? They're like, oh, I use them all the time. Let's see this stuff. So what's the action here?
So it's from a VBA within Excel 2010. So here's a range. Select group start equals true. End period. So he has.
Oh, sometimes these things actually numbers, like that. It's all small, 43 and stuff like that. Build a what from PowerShell? Trying to build something from PowerShell?
Well, he wants to convert this macro within Excel to PowerShell. He wants to, and the part that he can't get to working.
Control PowerShell or Excel, I guess?
That's what it looks like. Let's see what he's got.
That sounds like similar to what I did, and I had to learn stuff. That it's not the same as you can't use VBA from PowerShell.
Well, PowerShell you can call com as well.
Yeah.
So he can't get the groupings that he's defined within Excel. Is that right, Jeff? You have groupings within Excel, and he can't get those out in the PowerShell. Which basically what I think is airing is those groupings. The names of those groupings aren't available to him in PowerShell, and he needs to. Basically, you need those groupings before you can do anything.
Looking for them. The things that they put, I had to find this accidentally on the internet that I was trying to do this before, but I had to bring in control Excel, manipulate it.
Right.
They get like Excel shift to right, things like that. Because like, where did this come from? How much do you need to look for? Can we get back to the question? Yeah. So you did, I'm assuming you did an auto recording macro, and then you did that out of it.
Well, it was about the yes answer was from the groupings thing, because the groupings are defined within Excel, and I think that's where the problem is, right? He's got these groupings in Excel that he needs to access through PowerShell.
He needs to find out what there's true is and anything else, because it's not necessarily going to translate directly into the same code. But you look up text to comments, like, okay, yeah, I should be able to do that. And then kick into VBA, so it actually different.
Yeah, and if you were to take a look at this later, we'll post this to once we post this session. And if anybody wants to help out, they can post the forum. I think.
Jeff, just see if any of this can help you. Do a search on Bing, Google, whatever, or $XL delimited, $XL text qualifier, $XL shift to right, different things like that. That might actually give you formula that may explain possible functions to change from invoked in VBA to controlling itself in PowerShell. It took me. I was going nuts trying to figure out why the same code in VBA that I couldn't call it. And it's not using VBA in Excel, you can't call it. you actually have a different method.
Any other questions? Comments? Problems?
There's Excel text qualifier and everything. They become numbers, like Excel delimited is 1. Excel text qualifier is -4143. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of text to numbers that actually change.
Well, there's no more comments. I think we are done for the evening. Yeah.
Well, you know what? We could have actually had them talk.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.